Hello and welcome to Conversations with Arizona Housers, part of our ongoing Cost of Home series. My name is Dusty and I'm with Habitat for Humanity Central Arizona, also known as Habitat. We're joined today with Dave Brown, CEO of Valley Leadership, Jason Barlow, President and CEO of Habitat Central Arizona, and Gabriel Jaramillo, who handles community development for Habitat here locally in Arizona, and will be our moderator today. So welcome you guys, and thank you for jumping in with us today. Before we begin, Dave, can you tell us a little bit about you, your background, and what brought you to be CEO of Valley Leadership?
Sure. So thank you for having me. I look forward to talking housing. I spent the last 14, 15 years in the affordable housing community development space nationally in Washington, D.C. I ran a group called the National NeighborWorks Association. Had probably a dozen or so Habitat affiliates as members, and we pushed Congress and the powers that be to invest more in housing and see housing not as a subsidy but as a quality of life issue. And from there launched a movement that Habitat was also a part of called Home Matters that really tried to change the narrative and continues to try and change the narrative about affordable housing and community development, not being just four walls and a roof, but really something about your home, where you live. And that includes how your kids are educated, whether you have access to fresh foods, whether you can go out and walk in the evening and you have sidewalks, things like that. Really trying to push the federal government in particular around let's continue to invest, and let's invest greater in those kind of community development needs, and not just think about it as we get a bunch of tax money and we want to throw a subsidy to create housing. Four walls and a roof, absolutely a great thing, but let's start thinking about how we think beyond that into the other ways that a home impacts your quality of life. So from there, started working for Valley Leadership now almost 3 years ago. Is actually a fellow houser, Denise Resnick, who just launched First Place, which is a housing for adults with autism, and her whole narrative around community, and that we can't just build this building. We got to get these residents jobs. They got to be able to interact with each other. They got to be able to interact with the community. So for me, Valley Leadership and what it can accomplish in the community is great. It's a network of people who want to see things done, can get things done, working with partners like Habitat and others who are getting things done as we speak. So very excited to see how Valley Leadership dips its toe in the affordable housing and community development space, and thank you for having me.
That's awesome. Well, thank you all again for being here. Gabriel, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. Well, again, thank you guys for your time. Dave, Jason, Dusty, again, this is definitely our first interview online, so thank you again. Still trying to keep the conversation about housing going. Still want to keep it in sight. So that's something that we've seen a lot of recently are these conference calls with elected officials, with city officials, city leaders talking about housing and the types of resources that are coming out for all the benefit packages. We still know housing needs to be addressed even in these times. So Dave, my first question is to you. What do you see as one of the most beneficial or at the same time detrimental pieces of legislation affecting housing in Arizona?
So one of the most beneficial pieces of legislation that can affect Arizona and can continue to affect Arizona, I think, is the Housing Trust Fund. You look at other states across the country where you have that investment and you have that kind of go-to housing investment. Works even better when there's a crisis like there is now with the pandemic and people being able to or not being able to pay rent and doing those sorts of things. So having that access to cash essentially for those more critical needs, especially when it comes to the homeless population, I'm pleased Arizona has a fund. I would always recommend that there's more investment in that fund as possible, because you can see how it's put to use in times like these when people need it. I think another important part of this, and not silver lining because we all knew it before, but the affordable housing crisis in Phoenix and Arizona continues to rise. I think Arizona was the only state, it may have been Phoenix metro area, only region that saw its rents increase last month than anywhere else in the country. So we're continuing to see that rise in rents and pricing people out. So the more flexible investment we have to get people that much needed subsidy in order to be able to afford something, quick access to capital, it's working there too.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I know, Jason, you do a lot of work with Habitat International, U.S. Council, and some of the advocacy through them. What's something that you've heard about, a piece of legislation that's affecting housing, maybe here locally?
Well, I would echo, and first of all, thanks for everybody being here. Dave, thanks for joining us. And I think the Housing Trust Fund for us here in Arizona is probably the lowest hanging fruit for us. It's funded by unclaimed property and gifts and who knows what else. And it used to be fairly large, and now it's small. We had 1 year of a bump up. But the piece of that now is that none of it really goes to home ownership. And Habitat is about home ownership. We think one of the surest ways to break the cycle of poverty in this country today is for somebody to own their home and build equity. That's what Habitat's about. So not maybe right now, but in the future, we'd love to see some of those trust funds going towards the home ownership bucket, if you please. I mean, homelessness to Habitat, there's a huge spectrum here, right? And we just like to see a little of that money coming back. As it was alluded to, rents are going up. Believe it or not, the cost of land has really not dropped any in Phoenix. We're constantly looking for available property during this COVID pandemic and have just not seen many deals come through. Maybe they're some months away, but Habitat is always searching for property, either existing units that can be renovated like a townhome or a condo, or vacant land for building either single family homes on it or entire neighborhoods. We built 17 neighborhoods in the valley, if you can believe that. So the Land Trust Fund for affordable housing would be great. Another thing that Gabriel and I worked on, and that is tax exemptions for property held by nonprofits for affordable housing. We have to pay property taxes on land that we hold for future Habitat homeowners and for property under development. So that would be a huge benefit to us if we could see that relief somewhere in the future as well.
Absolutely. Thank you both. I know the Housing Trust Fund is something that we've been supporting on the legislative state side to see the increase for us. So we've approached representatives asking them for an increase of the funding to get a pre-recession levels. That's the big push by the Housing Coalition. In addition to that, like Jason alluded to, we'd also like to see the expansion of possible uses for it to expand into, housing for housing counseling to get families ready and transitioning from the rental to eventual home ownership. So programs like that. So the increased funding in Housing Trust Fund is absolutely something that's that could be a great benefit to Arizona. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Gabriel. And if I could just add too, coming out of the recession, we had programs like the LIFT program from Wells Fargo, the foreclosure mitigation counseling program. And those were tremendously successful because they helped those renters who now wanted to have that sustainability and stability of a owned home, and there were down payment assistance programs. So to me, that Housing Trust Fund shouldn't be just the one type of housing. As you talked about, Jason, there's that whole continuum. When we launched Home Matters, it was we wrestled with this too because, as you guys all know, in DC, there's a trade group for every line item in the budget. There's a trade group for every type of houser. And we really pushed on the housing agnostic. Let's just say, overall, we need more money. We need more investment in home. And that can come in very low-income housing. It can come in home ownership. And there's activities and policies that can be improved in all those areas that, in times of crisis, when you have rental crisis, maybe you need to put some in there. When there's an opportunity to really seize for home ownership, get into those down payment assistance programs and some of the other things where you can get that family who may have not been able to ever get a home now able to get a home. And so that's, to me, I hope, power of what a trust fund can do for any state, in particular Arizona, where it's not a California, it's not one of the cities. You absolutely still have opportunities for home ownership, and home ownership where you don't have to be necessarily way out in the, after the exurbs of Phoenix, but you're still able to get home and land within the city. That's rare across the country. So where a housing trust fund can be flexible enough to tap some of those opportunities when they exist, it just requires lots of capital. So I always push for, obviously, more money for housing.
Yeah. Dave, I'd mentioned we are in fact building within the shadow of downtown Phoenix affordable housing. And we're doing it because we were in partnership with the city of Phoenix. We were awarded 30 lots. A lot of these were old HUD funded lots, infill lots. And we've already finished 10 of those homes, have another 20 to go. And as part of that partnership, we promised to renovate another 80 homes in that general area. So I agree with you. It is getting harder and harder to find affordable housing within a stone's throw of downtown, but we're able to do it when we have amazing partnerships like with the city of Phoenix, and they're able to basically turn over land to us, and then we can find the sponsor. There's no problem finding families, and certainly we have the volunteers to build the home. And that's why I call Habitat a perfect public-private partnership, because if the city can just give us their vacant property, which they're doing nothing with, by the way, except cleaning junk off of it and posted no trespassing signs. If they can turn that property over to Habitat, we can put a beautiful new home on it with an affordable family in it that needs housing desperately, and the property's back on the tax rolls, and the neighborhood has been elevated by new construction in some of these very distressed areas.
Absolutely.
Well, as we discussed raising capital and understanding the need for it, Dave, what is some of the most creative approaches that you've seen to generate funding for housing?
So to me, it comes down to leverage and collaboration. So, and you see these all across the country, essentially pools of money. So where you can get investor money that wants, some equity out of a project, where you can get very low interest loans into a pool, and then just the free money on the grant side that looks to take all of that and do something with it together. So there's an exciting new fund that's going to be announced soon, where all of the health plans in Arizona, or most of the health plans in Arizona, they are required by access law, that's those serving the very low income, to reinvest a portion of their profits into the community. And a few of their leaders in the health plan industry said, hey, instead of us all kind of doing one-off ad hoc kind of investment into the community, why don't we pool our resources, make it more attractive to other types of investors, from the bank side, from corporate, wherever, and let's do some building in the Phoenix area, the Tucson area, Flagstaff, Yuma, anywhere across the state, because it's going to be a statewide fund, where again they're leveraging. And so part of this new fund will be some of the home matters criteria. So do we have access to a grocery store? What are the schools like? Is there some economic development opportunities around? It's not specific to any type of housing. It runs the continuum from very low income supportive housing all the way to home ownership. It's not going to be for building mansions, but it's a great idea of, here are pots of money that work much better when they're combined and collaborated on, and can really leverage other pots of money. So we're excited. That's going to get announced next month. The fact that the groups came together, health plans are not housers. They don't know necessarily how housing and community development works. They have the general idea of all the layers of investment you need to make a project work, but they're excited about how they can improve communities. which speaks directly to Habitat's mission. What we're doing at Home Matters, that it's the housing plus, it's the home plus. What else can we be doing for a community beyond giving a home to a family that really improves their quality of life? So it'll be pretty exciting. We're going to see what kind of projects get funded out of it. I can't mention a number, but it's a significant number of capital they've been able to put into the pot, plus that we're been able to raise. So it's innovative collaborations like that. I look at my mentor in St. Louis, Beyond Housing, who in a suburb of St. Louis decided, let's ask the community, what is it you need? 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes away is nearest grocery store. We need a grocery store. So we got a grocery store. So we have no entertainment, but a movie theater. No bank, they got a bank. The rental housing became rent to own, so that it is moving his residents towards that ideal of home ownership, and be able to build wealth and all the great things that come with home ownership. So there's opportunities for that in Phoenix and across the state, and this fund is singularly targeted on that kind of idea. How do we build stronger communities that can build wealth and all that? So innovative things like that, where you're connecting dots among, again, those quality of life issues, very excited about.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dave. And self-interest is not a four-letter word. And I think the healthcare establishments, the large healthcare organizations have realized, and there's been several national studies done, that really housing is healthcare. Housing is healthcare. If you put a family in a decent, non-mold ridden, safe house, the kids do better in school, they're healthier, all of those metrics. In fact, Habitat has been in discussions with United Healthcare here in the Valley for some time, and their CEO, Joe Gaudio, shared with us that he thought for every dollar he spent in a community trying to help that community get safer, more healthy housing, he would save $5, $6, $7 in the emergency room by those people coming in there. So from that spinoff, Habitat is pursuing being a Medicaid contractor, where we can actually go in to homes and help people that have had recent healthcare visits. We've spun off an aging in place program where we're going out and trying to keep seniors safer in their homes with grab bars and ramps and wider doorways and what have you, but also new roofs and windows, AC, that kind of thing, because we all know that a house is a safe place. And think about this whole pandemic. What was the first thing the government said to do? Shelter in place, shelter in your home, because it's the safest place. But imagine if you didn't have a safe place to shelter in. So that's what drives Habitat to keep doing what it's doing.
Yep.
Well, we'd love to hear that. Like you were saying, I'm glad to hear that the healthcare providers are going to be taking a different approach. And it's as community development organizers, we see that on a very micro level. In any neighborhood revitalization program that we do, it's interesting to go into a community and the partnerships that need to be built in order to do housing preservation and partner with that community, whether it's, the faith leaders, the nonprofits, the community leaders, to layer all those and connect all those dots to bring our services and how Habitat fits into that. That's something that we take into every community that we go into through neighborhood revitalization. So hearing that the healthcare providers are taking that approach to see how they can best pull their resources to make a difference is great to hear. I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can partner with that, see how we can make a bigger impact in all of our neighborhood revitalization projects and expand housing. So thank you for that. Dave, so how do you think leadership groups and organizations like Valley Leadership can lend their expertise to address housing in Arizona?
Yeah, so we, over the last couple of years, have pivoted. And part of that pivot, which every leadership group also grapples with, is how do we get our leaders engaged? It's not easy to just go right into affordable housing and be engaged. Like it's a very complicated space. Again, every line along that continuum is different, requires different funding, regulations, all that sort of thing. So we've pushed our leaders over the last couple of years to start thinking about what they can offer in three ways: as an individual, as part of their community, and then systemically. So when you think individual, we press them to say, you know, where are the things in your neighborhood that you could do right now? I immediately think habitat. You can build a home, like you can actually help build someone's home. On a community side, you can help promote and say to the powers that be in city council and others, we want this habitat subdivision. And we want to make sure that it gets here, and we want to make sure it stays affordable in perpetuity, and all the different things they can do. And then systemically, that comes down to really more of the big picture, big funding pots, other policies that allow, like the low-income housing tax credit. How do we get as many of those credits here as possible? Thinking about those. So in addition to being able to do something, we also want people to be informed. So our programming over the last couple of years is really focused in on those social determinants of health, and showing that direct link between, if you don't have the safe, stable home, what does that mean for your health? What does that mean for your job prospects? What does it mean for your kids' education? What does it mean for your own wealth building and how you'll be able to support yourself going forward? So we really have pushed our leaders to think about even the little things they do individually are important, and they matter, and they can make a difference. And then as you start moving along that spectrum of, now let's think about the community. And we actually looked at an example Denver had when it came to affordable housing. They started individually. Let's work with Habitat. They started building houses throughout their program year. And then they started to ramp up and start seeing, okay, we need more units. And there's this big development that's going to happen, and it's going to start gentrification, and there's NIMBYism and all that sort of other stuff, where they went out into the community to gather that information and say, all right, coffee store owner, what is it we need to be aware of if we move forward with this project? And working with their mayor and thinking about all the good that affordable housing is going to bring to that neighborhood, and how they can work with the community to keep rents low and keep a place where anybody can call home available. They went to the city council and continued to advocate, and they did a 250 unit project that today is still going well, because they went into that community and really figured out how they could work together for that. So it's that everyday kind of engagement that any leader can do. Leadership for Valley Leadership is an activity. It's not a position. Anybody can do it. And we promote and push people to do exactly that, whether on that individual, community, or systemic basis.
Awesome. Well, speaking about leaders, our very own Dusty, recent graduate. Dusty, you want to tell us a little bit about your experience with Valley Leadership and how you enjoyed it?
Oh, yeah. Valley Leadership was a great fit for me, having been with Habitat for the last few years and understanding that so often we can't wait for solutions to come along, but we have to kind of get started. And Valley Leadership, their whole principle of doing, Dave mentioned, what can I do as an individual? What can I do at the community level? What can I do at the budget and policy level to affect change? And the best part is everyone that's involved in it is so jazzed up to participate, and it really helps sort of green light a lot of ideas that might otherwise fall off the table. And I think for me, it just showed that we don't have to wait. We can lead. Like you said, it's an activity. We can get moving on some things. We can't do everything all at once, but we can get started on a few things and follow the bright spots. So thanks for asking that, Gabriel.
Yeah, I think, Dave, congratulations are in order, because Dusty is an Accelerate graduate of Valley Leadership. He did come back jazzed up. And when this whole pandemic hit, what does Dusty do? He comes up with his own initiative called Team Can Do. And he throws this kind of a project together with leaders from across the organization to look at what can we do in the midst of this dark cloud. And so I just thought that is a great testimony to Valley Leadership, the training, and what you just talked about, Dusty, what you learned. So congrats and hats off to Dave and your group for graduates like Dusty that are really making a difference.
We'll get you and Gabriel in there too.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for. Oh, we're happy to have Dusty and Valley Leadership represented on the Habitat staff. I know, Jason, I wanted to ask you the same question. I know we are addressing housing every day in a little more in different ways. Um, how is Habitat addressing housing through our advocacy?
Well, just one. I mean, we're pivoting, like you said, Dave, in a lot of different aspects. We immediately wrote our senators and congressmen after they passed the CARES Act and thanked them for that. Told them how impactful those funds would be to our program and our small little piece of the pie here in Phoenix. But we recently got a piece of legislation through that got us a license plate, an Arizona license plate. Gabriel spearheaded that through legislation by Senator Rebecca Rios, and it was signed by the governor. And we're just waiting on AZDOT to get it produced. But it was called the Affordable Housing Specialty Plate. The idea was that people could see that plate and think about Habitat, not just in Phoenix, but the entire state. So we're excited about that. Basically, I guess more to answer your question, Gabriel, we will talk to anybody who will listen about affordable housing, the cost of home, and all of the associated principles of our mission and what we do. Many people still think Habitat gives away its homes. Nothing could be further from the truth. Our homeowners, home buyers, if you please, they purchase their home from Habitat at zero interest, an affordable mortgage that, because we're the bank, we compute out to make sure that the payment does not exceed 30% of their gross monthly income. The more people we can tell that, and oh, by the way, the family works 400 hours of sweat equity on their own home or elsewhere in the network. So when people hear that, they go, wow, that's really a hand up, not a handout. So more and more people get excited about Habitat when they see that. But really, we realize we're just part of a solution on this big spectrum, Dave, that we pointed out, from all the way from homelessness to putting them in a home that they own. And so we're not the answer for everything, but we want to help where we can. And so we want to be at the table when affordable housing issues are discussed, or any kind of housing issues, because maybe we can help. I mean, we have 6 nonprofits in the Valley have approached us about building transitional housing for veterans, for women. We're working on the Hope Women's Center in a transition there. So we could be the construction arm of a lot of nonprofits in building some sort of shelter, if you please. Even though that doesn't fit our model, our normal mission, but in the way of pivoting and making a bigger impact, we're willing to look at everything, including 3D printed homes, which we hope to have one done, the first Habitat 3D printed home here in the Valley in a few months. Think about if you could print a home in 7 hours, most of that home in 7 hours, what the impact to affordable, reproducible housing could be, and bring that cost and the sustainability piece. There's a lot less waste involved. So we're looking at a lot of different options, and I appreciate Gabriel's advocacy efforts. He really leads our advocacy committee for our efforts really for the staff. And we now have an advocacy committee of our board of directors, and Camille Perez is the chair of that board or that committee. So we're here. We're God willing, we're not going anywhere. And thank you for your time.
Dave, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Home matters.
Home matters. We do a lot of advocacy. Have a lot of conversation with housers, and I know home matters has been brought up. So it's great job on that. The idea of home matters has been brought up, and the aspects of housing and the effects of a community and everything that goes around it. So I know that's something that's important to Habitat as we partner with communities. Thank you all for your time. Dusty, Jason, Dave, again, you guys, it was a great conversation. Thank you. If you guys have anything for me, please let me know. Dusty, you have anything else?
I don't. Thank you, guys.